I'd love to start with this. Data Motus.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And how does that relate to what you guys are trying to build?
So Data Motus, Motus is a Latin term meaning advance, emotion, movement, passion, rebel, revolt. So it's very much an individual sort of movement from the standpoint of supporting the concept of SSIs, right? Like the self-sovereign identity concept has been around a long time. And so it's really uh, sort of a call out to say, we need to take our data back. We need to move towards, this movement of Web3 and decentralization and technologies like decentralized identities to really allow people to really own their agency, right? Like own their capabilities, control any and all aspects of their data, have complete transparency and accountability of their digital self, no matter what platforms they're using. And so that's kind of the impetus of the company name. So
Tell me a little bit more about Data Motus in terms of like what you guys are, what's kind of the priorities?
yeah, so we have a much larger, sort of, I guess, boil the ocean type scope in mind in terms of both that as well as our sister organization called Social Change Platforms, which is really on the public sector side, building democracy as a product solutions and decentralized identities, transparency and accountability around every public sector process. That's a whole nother world. But Data Motus is on the private sector side. And so we've thought, how are we going to introduce, these concepts and this technology to individuals in a really relevant and, sort of small win way, and that will really resonate with people. And so there's a couple of markets that we're going after in that space. They're really tied together. It's going to be a little bit of a 1-2 punch. One is in the space of the NIL market. So name, image, and likeness. That's a very hot topic these days for student athlete, about a $1.2 billion market. It's about to explode. But naturally, the players have no ability to control and manage their NIL in that space. And so that's what we want to do, is kind of flip the script there and empower student athletes in the NIL space. And then right along with that, social media. It's a dumpster fire of an industry. I think we can all agree. It is begging for a revamp. And so we're building a social media consolidation and generative AI solution there. And so it's all about getting away from the harmful algorithms and the lack of control in the current social media space and bringing your content into a new space where you can control it, do data monetization. And that's where those two will kind of melt together. Most of your NIL stuff is in your social media. So that's where we look to make the biggest impact. And of course, adoption of DIDs and things of that nature as we move forward.
As you guys are thinking about this, like with Data Motus, what part of what we're talking about is kind of like a movement of data, right? Like free flowing data. How do you guys think about creating an environment where, data can be free flowing while ensuring, privacy is preserved or ensuring data is not misused?
Yes. Yeah, that is the holy grail in this space. And so within creating this kind of mini economy or hermetically sealed environment of these new solutions that we plan to build, we plan to completely empower the end user in that space and do that through the onboarding process to show them the kind of power that they'll have. And so one is, spinning up their DIDs and, their decentralized identities and their profiles around that. Do a first one related to you being an athlete. You can do another one related to you being into fashion or music or whatever it may be, and then getting those DIDs and your digital wallet spun up. So that is where we want to create a really easy as heck, user-friendly did as model. So, you've heard of SaaS, right? Software as a service, PaaS, and all the others. We want to create a decentralized identity as a service so that they can get on board with that. And then coupled with that is a rules engine as a service. We've already built the APIs and a relational data model as it relates to the backend plumbing of our social media product we're calling Timebox, to not only bring in all of your social media data across a number of platforms, but to automatically categorize it and place it into a relational database. And at the same time, have data privacy laws, rules, procedures automatically apply to the data based on the category that it's put in. So for example, if it's your height, your weight, certain healthcare related data, then okay, it's going to fall into this space and HIPAA laws will automatically apply. If it's your social security number or your credit card or any other financial related data, then it'll fall into the FINRA and KYC AML rules category, right? Know your customer, anti-money laundering. So those are the state and maybe federal and industry vertical related rules that we'll have. So it's really honestly converting text into code. And so we'll do that maybe with a company like yourselves at ArcBlock in terms of building those rules so that it automatically applies to their data. In terms of the NIL space, of course, this is all new. And I'm an individual, I'm an artist. I want to be able to write my own rules. Can I do that and apply those rules to my stuff? And the answer is yes. No, you don't have to be a coder. We're going to create that interface. In fact, we'll already have sort of a standard set list of, this is the NIL out of the box protections that you get, and you can read them and understand them and check and uncheck the boxes and apply what you want to your stuff. And so that's the empowerment aspect of it. And then the infrastructural piece is, of course, the end user won't care about this. They just want to make sure that it works and it's scalable. But the main point is, we want to architect it so that it's really lightweight, really scalable. And, we pass those savings on to the consumer. And of course, in terms of that setup process, just unbelievably powerful, right? Like it's all protected. So all your stuff is hermetically sealed in that new space.
As you're describing that, how does or why is decentralized identity technology part of the vision, specifically, like, for example, in the NIL market, right? How do you guys see using decentralized identity and why is that?
It's critical because of the level of the power and control that they have over their digital identities and their digital self within the outside world. There are all kinds of things happening out there that they might not know about in terms of what's going on with, proper or improper use of their NIL. They would probably like to be informed of that. So if we have, for example, crawl services that are running across certain social media platforms and automated notifications that are coming into them every time their NIL is, maybe mentioned or used, then which of course would be the rules that are also sitting inside of your decentralized identity, then that would be a benefit to you. And so DID is the linchpin as far as all of that transparency and accountability around you. And so that's critical. And so that aspect of the technology is really what will set you apart and really flip the script in terms of what's happening now in the NIL space. I mean, they're just being taken advantage of. I mean, there are players in the market now that are taking anywhere from 10 to 50% of their NIL money from the student athlete. I mean, like, good Lord, talk about a hefty commish. It's going to flip the scripts, as I say. It'll put them in control, and they will have the power to really negotiate their own NIL terms and have complete visibility into what's taking place with their NIL.
So what we're describing here is some of the benefits that athletes can get with decentralized identity technology. Specifically, right, if you talk about Timebox and social media, or you talk about NIL solutions, how does it help athletes really manage and monetize their content in a way that they control? Moreover, in a way that's kind of a friendly user experience.
Right. So let's go through kind of a use case around that. And I'll kind of meld both the Timebox and the NIL component into one as far as this example, because they do very much overlap. So let's say you're a student athlete, you stand up an NIL service. And again, we have an excellent UX lead, Obama Mills, who worked at Starbucks for like 20 years. And he's fantastic in terms of app design. And so building something that is just incredibly easy in terms of flow through, in terms of creating your single profile as an athlete or multiple profiles, and, setting up your digital identities in your wallets and things like that. And then, of course, sort of the terms around your stuff. Once you do that and you say, okay, I also want to get my social media content, and that's where our APIs will say, all right, just, select the ones that you want to grab. And, we run through that process and do that auto categorization that come in, this new environment. If, like you say, they create another profile where they're a musician, right? And they create a new beat or a lyric or something of that nature. This is where we get into like the tokenization of RWAs, right? Real world assets. And this is another aspect where we hope to use ArcBlock and your infrastructure as far as like the NFT marketplace, right? So we also want to design, again, easy as heck approach to say, hey, guess what? As part of Timebox, we also have this thing called the music and art data marketplace that's within Timebox. And that allows you to take tokenized assets like a beat or a lyric or whatever you have, a song that you created, tokenize it with an NFT that you design through this marketplace, slap your face on there or create a little 3D image or whatever it is, and associate that token to that digital asset that you just created, and then just send it to the music and art data marketplace. And then your terms of use will be, of course, surrounded within it as well already. And there will be pricing structures in there. And we haven't fully built this out yet, but of course, it stands to reason that there would be maybe negotiations and back and forth, right? And you would have secure communications. between buyer and seller, and the market would find an equilibrium for that price. And it's like, okay, people want to use it. Every time they download it, then those microtransactions happen and you get X number of ABTs or crypto or whatever NFT that you set up back in your digital wallet. And I think the same can be held true for their NIL stuff, right? Like, oh, a marketing company or anybody, an agent or whatnot, who's on nilportal.org, who wants to contact them. Yeah, sure. But the terms are built in, right? So it would be really kind of an automated component of their life, right? It's kind of like a set it and forget it, and then it's out there. But then the ad hoc stuff of like, music or whatever, maybe fashion stuff that you create, one-offs or something that maybe that you pulled in from your social media. It's like, ooh, I want to tokenize that and send it out there, see what happens. You can do that as well. So it's that ease of use. It's that, feeling, not only the feeling, but actualization of control of your stuff, tokenization of it, and then, monetization within data marketplaces.
The way that you're describing this, how does someone can have control, right? And again, as I'm explaining to people, like NIL, like an athlete, how do they actually interact with you to make a decision, to approve something?
We have to understand, do the two parties, two agents, whatnot, have to be within the same ecosphere, the same environment, meaning do they need to also have a DID if it's an agent or a marketing company or whoever who wants to use their stuff? Likely the answer is yes. So we might have that market of like, okay, we've got all the student athletes over here. We got like 500,000 of them. And a part of the same environment, we've got 10,000 agents or people who sign up, and there would be, probably subscription aspects to both, right? But they would be within the same environment, right? And then they would be able to talk securely and negotiate and then perform transactions between one another. But yeah, it's worth calling out that what we're talking about and what we're building is kind of next generation. So it's not out in the public domain yet, right? Like you cannot just have all of this take place and have all of those elements apply to your stuff absolutely everywhere, right? There will be certain aspects of the services that will be able to reach outward, like the AI crawls, things of that nature. But yeah, think of it as the full list of features and capabilities will exist in that ecosphere for all of the players and all the people within it. And a smaller amount of those features would also apply outside. Mainly, of course, that's what they care about the most. And what we've talked to them about is like, I want to know what's going on out there with my stuff, right? I just want to be told, right? Like if it's being used, or if someone, what they worry about the most is like, is someone bad mouthing me on social media, and I haven't caught it, or whatever. So, crawls of that nature, we've got ChatGPT-4 plugged in on the social media side. So we can, you can do auto tweets and auto replies and whatnot. It's kind of a full-fledged list of services in the ecosphere, in the environment we build, and, sort of limited features on the outside. If that makes sense.
I don't think many people know most NIL deals don't actually include social media use. How does, we'll say Timebox, and again, kind of the NIL offering really address all of me concept, right?
Exactly. Yes. I've looked at many NIL contracts, and yeah, these are written by universities. Like LSU has a really good NIL program and it's really popping up now. It's really limited. Well, first of all, that scope of, what we consider your NIL to be is A, B, and C. And what you can do with it, we dictate the terms, so there's multiple bad aspects to it in terms of for the student athlete. This does two things much better for them. Number one, it blows it up into, all of me, because name, image, likeness is, my personality is my likeness, right? Like how I feel about certain things and how I express myself on social media is part of my likeness, right? Or my name, I consider that to be a part of my name. John Doe, it's like, no, like every aspect associated to me, I consider to be my name. So that would be a lot of their social media space and any images, photos, but also 3D rendering. So being able to track that as well to make sure that people aren't spinning up likeness images of you. And that's another part of the AI crawl piece. So, it expands the world of their NIL to what they consider their true NIL to be, which I would think is everything, right? Everything associated to them, right? In terms of their digital self. Right? If that's the case, I want to dictate the definition of what I am and how it should be used rather than some random agent or university or whatever, right? So it expands the ecosphere to the true digital self of oneself in this digital world we live in, it also flips the script in terms of who gets to write the terms. And that will equilibrium itself out, of course, but the empowerment is massive in the space, in the hands of the athlete.
So it sounds like what you tell me is when I release my music playlist, I should have some control over
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And like the downloads of it. And yeah, absolutely. I am not well enough to speak on, and I wish I had my other, Obana, my other partner, is also a DJ, and he knows the music industry way better than I do. Yeah, I can't drop his name, but we've got a verbal commitment from a certain Seattle rap legend who might want to be a part of this. I just got a call last night from a few others who really want to be a part of this. They understand the music industry, these other folks, way better than I do in terms of, this is what you need to do in terms of how you manage replay, or you want to have redistribution rights or things of that nature. Like there's all kinds of stuff. Just basically text to code or text to smart contracts, or hit as far as like converting those rules and terms into code and then applied to all of your digital assets in that space.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. How do you, kind of to flip the script, I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure, right? To do the things you're describing, because I think equally as important is what's happening under the hood. And sometimes, we pay a little bit less attention to that. But so Data Motus, right? Your guys' focus, and you'd like to emphasize the use of open source and open source code and infrastructure. Why is that? Why is that a good match to your mission? And what projects are you guys currently supporting to do this?
I talk to people about, and this is also on the social change platform side, which is really where we're working with communities of color to build next generation socioeconomic solutions, policing, voting, democracy as a product solutions. At the heart of all of this is whenever you venture down any path and you want to achieve something, it turns out we all want the exact same thing, the best possible results, right? And so how do you get that? You tap the best possible resources, you tap the best possible technology, and you apply what you need in order to achieve those goals. From there, you just pick it off the shelf, right? And that's what open source is. And that's all I'm doing. It's like I've known about DIDs ever since they were created at Microsoft when I worked there in 2018, and said, this is it. Like, this is how we empower the individual, right? And I've been a data governance officer by training, helping companies become GDPR and CCPA compliant in terms of data privacy laws. So it's just like, I'm trying to put all that together to say, we need to tap the best resources and the best technologies, the best services available to us to achieve the best possible outcomes, period. And open source is the place to do that. You run into so many just brilliant people who are working on amazing things. I'm just like, man, that is a beautiful little nugget. I want to grab that, and I want to see if I can include that in what we're doing. And this is fantastic. I'm going to bring this over as well, right? The goal of all of this, really. And again, that's to achieve those best possible outcomes. But what's just as important as that is transparency and accountability, right? It has to be there, right? And when we're talking, to Black communities about, what they see and what they can't trust, which is pretty much everything out there, right? You have to have that level of transparency and accountability on what's being built, right? Because it matters who writes the code, right? And you have to be able to see what is being done there. A great example, just real quick, is AI, right? What is going on with AI as far as what's coming at us, right? And that's the key question that we have to ask ourselves, that everybody should be able to ask that question, the key question of, where's my powerful technology, right? Where's my individual powerful technology that's just as powerful, if not more powerful, than the AI that's coming at me, right? All the time. Where is that, right? And the answer is it doesn't exist. Well, it does in the form of decentralized identities and other services that you can layer on top of it, but it's not there yet. So I want to be able to see everything that's coming at me and find out, who built it, who paid for it, right? What's the actual result, right? And the variance between expected and actual. And because of Gen AI, is it creeping away from, the expected, as far as the actual, right? And it started at 98% relevance, and now it's at like 65 because it's creeping away and it's moving away from its mission. And now it's doing all kinds of crazy things that we didn't want it to in the beginning, right? You can create an open AI marketplace where, just like books on Amazon, you can rate them, right? In terms of like 1 out of 5 stars. And you can see, it's like, you know what? I don't want those harmful algorithms hitting me. And like, why would I want to participate in this AI where it says they're trying to create better efficiencies in the retail industry, eliminate like 30% of the jobs? I work in retail. Like, why would I contribute to killing my own job? Are you out of your mind? So that level of transparency and accountability that can only come through open source and these technologies. You have to have that. There is no other path forward. I hear about the Stargate and all this other crap that's going on. Like, I wouldn't trust any of those fools any farther than I can throw them. It has to be this way. This is the only path forward. So it's that individual accountability, transparency aspect to an example like that of AI for the individual with DIDs. And of course, all of your rights guaranteed, all of the, day one governance and compliance models you can build. I plan to talk to the Attorney General here in Washington State about this, right? As far as like, as soon as you pass a law, don't just pass a law and pat yourself on the back, like, good job. No, you need to build an infrastructure that guarantees the rights of all citizens under said law, and all the companies that are supposed to be compliant under said law need to be on that infrastructure so that you can audit them and ensure that they are compliant, right? That's the only way to do it. And so it's the infrastructure that you're on, as well as the individual, power and freedom of the technologies that, the individual is using, that ensures their digital sovereignty. I mean, that's the path forward. Open source has to be it. It's the only way, and it'll prove itself out. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is just build a little tiny example of that, and like, see, it works here. All right. Okay. Now wash, rinse, repeat. Okay. You did it in NIL. Now do it in social media. Now do it in healthcare. Now do it in finance and education, prison reform, policing. Just keep going. Right. And that's where I see it going.
One of the things I love to ask people is, as a builder and someone who's thinking about decentralized technologies, if you could go talk to yourself last year and say, hey, Steve, here's something to know, or something you need to overcome that you didn't know, what would that be? And how did you find a solution to that with your old self?
That's a good question, man. I just had this revelation just a little while ago, because as part of this effort too, we're working with inner city groups, nonprofits, to train, especially women of color, in this latest space, Web3, building Web3 curriculum and whatnot. And I always knew about the issue of adoption, right? Kind of like what we talked about. And I was thinking about it, from the typical, white tech geek perspective of like, oh yeah, it's crypto. And it's like, or if there's anything mentioned about crypto and the blockchain, people freak out and they'll associate it to Bitcoin and getting ripped off and whatnot. So it's like user adoption is key and all this. But actually what I discovered was it's language, right? It's how you speak to the individual around the problems that they're facing and what you have available to you to provide them to solve those problems, right? And how you speak to it, in terms of the challenges that they face. And that is a learning process. I'm still like, beats the hell out of me, and like, that's where I'm partnering with so many others. Another answer to that is, so I go to Black Tech Week a lot in Cincinnati and other events all over the country like that, InvestFest and others. And the creator of Black Tech Week last year said to us, find your genius and know your genius, right? And focus on that. It's like, as startups, and as someone, you're trying to be everything, and it's like, yeah, I don't really have a finished product yet. I don't have a lot of revenue. I can't pay you just yet, or whatever, right? So like, you're forced into this role of like, do everything, right? And so instead of doing one thing really well, you're doing like 50 things poorly, and you don't realize that. Sometimes you just need to be smacked upside the head and like, hey, you're good at this, stick to this, and refine it, hone it, know your audience, understand how you need to speak to that topic to them, and continue to make it better and better and better, right? And then for this other stuff, you don't know UX, don't try and be a UX lead. You suck at it, okay? Like, go find somebody else to do that, right? I used to program, but no, man, I'm a backyard mechanic. So yeah, I mean, it's like, know your genius and know your audience, and find both and, and speak to both in a really sort of honed in, focused way, that's relevant to them, as far as how this can impact their lives. Yeah.
If I was to sit down with a product owner, founder, startup CEO, one of the first things I always like to ask people, this is classic product marketing, is first, who's your customer? And I'd go even further and phrase that as, who's your ICP, right? Which we all hear a lot, ideal customer profile. Who is that person? What's your addressable market? And then what value are you bringing to the problem you're trying to solve? And to your point about, knowing your customer and being able to speak the right language, critical to know when, where, and how to deliver the thing you're trying to deliver to somebody. Case in point is decentralized identity. If I go talk to Gemini, Google Gemini, or I talk to Notebook LM, sometimes I get different answers. Is it a DID? Is it a DID? Is it a DID tech? Those are things to solve. And it's really important. And I think to your point about as you're working with different nationalities, different races, different groups, really being honed in on who that person is. And most importantly, the value that you can give them, right? Because you have the potential to make a huge impact on their lives by solving a problem, solving a challenge. Sometimes those challenges are small, but sometimes they're very meaningful, right? And I think that's the power of what you guys are building with Timebox. One of the reasons I'm excited to work with you guys and learn more as you're going through this journey, because it is big impact stuff and it's so interesting, and seeing the tech being adopted that way is great. So
yeah, there's overviews of Timebox on our website, datamotus.ai. So it's motus.ai. And there's a whole lot of stuff on the social justice movement side of it, public sector side at socialchangeplatforms.com. There's a lot of content there. But yeah, datamotus.ai is the place to go. And we're looking
Steve, I'm definitely smarter from having this, and look forward to sitting down with you again. Where can people go to learn more about Timebox and the work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, for funding. We just reached out to a couple of venture capitalists. I really want it to be owned by the people too. Like, we have a whole plan to let the student athletes own it again through certificate stock tokens, crypto-based assets, as we build out the app and really make it a community-owned infrastructure and platform. You can go to datamotus.ai and hit me up, Steve at datamotus.ai, and let me know.